With practiced skill, you swing your weapon. The blade flashes through the monster's throat. Merciless. Perfect aim. It would appear that you are quite accustomed to killing. You wipe the blood off your weapon. As you do, you notice a shadow in the distance. Another monster, perhaps? You take the weapon on your back and aim it carefully before hurling it at the shadow with great force. It flies toward your target, tracing a perfect parabola. However, the tip of the spear strikes just slightly to the side of the shadow, which runs off. Whatever the shadow was, it was taken aback by your unexpected assault. It looks like it ran off in the direction of the spire near the village. You stand before the Spirit Spire, said to have been erected to protect the island. Yet with the villagers having accepted ruination, it now stands forlorn, an edifice without a purpose. This place, so named for the spirits themselves, is one that the villagers do not enter. Despite this, you say to yourself, I have to get rid of the monster, and decide to profane the place with your presence. There are some words etched into the door, but they are weathered and difficult to read. Worried though you are about whatever the words might say, you nonetheless try pushing the handle. With some protest, the door groans open. You spy the shadow of the monster you encountered earlier. Your insight that it had taken refuge in the spire has proven a good one. The shadow notices your presence and flies off at blinding speed. You can't help but admire the rapid escape, though it looks like you're back to chasing after a shadow. You survey your surroundings, relying on the shafts of sunlight filtering in through the windows. However, you're unable to see the monster from where you are. In the back of the large hall, there is an altar, which evinces a sense of deep mystery. The altar is wrought of a strange kind of stone, its surface polished smooth. It looks as though it's meant for use in some important ritual. You approach the altar to check that there are no places for monsters to hide themselves away inside it. In reply to the mysterious and unidentifiable voice that suddenly rent the silence, you ask in a sharp tone, "Who's there?" You strain your ears, trying to make out the broken snippets of words echoing off the chamber walls. After speaking a word that rings familiar to your ears, "Laddie," the voice becomes impossible to hear. It cannot be. Could you truly have heard the voice of the spirit from the Maiden's myth passed down on the island? All signs of the monster you were in pursuit of seem to have vanished. For the time being, you decide to return to the village and report your success. When you arrive at the mayor's house, there is a young visitor already there. She looks to be making an impassioned request of Grieth. In a wearied voice, Grieth replies, "There is no longer any maiden in our village." Admonished, the girl leaves the house with disappointment written across her expression. You inform the mayor that you've taken care of the monsters around town. As thanks for completing the job, the mayor hands you a basket of fruit. Oh, good, you think to yourself. Another day, another basket of fruit. You re-enter the grotto and announce your return. On a normal day, Laddie would already have zipped over to greet you. But today, nothing. You walk over to Laddie and discover that she is sound asleep. Life in the grotto is not one of creature comforts. Rather, a fair few inconveniences. You've tried several times to bring Laddie to the village, but she was adamantly opposed on every occasion. You sometimes catch glimpses of her face while she sleeps. Always it is contorted in anguish, as though she is in the throes of a terrible nightmare. You notice a bulky book lying open next to Laddie, filled with carefully drawn words and images. It seems to be some kind of picture book that Laddie made herself. You know, I confess, I am a bit curious. You can't help but feel like you ought to refrain. But in the end, you cannot overcome your curiosity and decide to take a look at the picture book. Beside evocative images of deep forests and towering mountain ranges, Laddie has written a story patterned after the Maiden's myth. The picture book story is set in a small village replete with nature. The village enjoys the promise of peace and tranquility, thanks to the young woman born to be the Maiden. The Maiden goes before the altar to perform a ritual, which invokes the power of a great spirit to protect the village. You look over the artwork, a spitting recreation of the altar you saw in the spire, and think back on the mysterious voice. The voice claimed it was a spirit, and you're certain it spoke Laddie's name. You are so caught up in the thoughts racing through your head that you fail to notice Laddie had awakened. Laddie seems embarrassed that you've seen her book. Tears prick the corners of her eyes. If Laddie were indeed the Maiden, it would be no exaggeration to call her the very light of hope, a protective force that could save the island from its encroaching ruin. With faint expectation tightening your chest, you consider taking her to the altar in the spire. You've given Laddie some of the fruit you brought back. She dreamily stuffs some of it into her mouth. Maybe she likes it. You hope so. Your stomach rumbles as you watch her, and together, the two of you enjoy a light meal. You take Laddie with you and return to the spire. As you approach the entrance of the spire, the staff that Laddie clutches close begins to emit a faint light. Seeing the mysterious light, you are convinced. Laddie has a deep connection to the spire, her expression uneasy. Laddie takes hold of your sleeve with a tentative touch. You stand before the altar once more, bathed in an air of mysticism. The light emitting from Laddie's staff intensifies, as if indicating its destination. In response to the enigmatic voice, Laddie's staff exudes a dazzling light. A spirit appears right before your eyes. Well, maybe it's a spirit. It's some kind of strange stuffed animal. The stuffed toy seems to be affecting a voice of considerable gravitas and choking itself in the process. This creature is called Lack. Though you cannot be certain it speaks the truth, it claims to be a spirit. You approach, hoping to ask about the maiden, but with blinding speed, Lack zooms behind Laddie, putting her between you as a shield. "You're the one from before," Lack says, quaking. It would appear that you're mistaking the creature for a monster, and doggedly chasing after it has made it rather afraid of you. You hold out an offer of reconciliation, and Lack takes it and immediately starts munching away. Between bites, it says, "You've got some good taste there." You're not really sure if the make good worked out, but in any event, Lack looks willing to listen to you now. You ask about the maiden once more, and Lack begins to talk a lot. It seems to enjoy doing so. Just as the maiden's myth handed down amongst the denizens of the island suggests, it explains, Laddie was indeed born to be the maiden here. However, she was unable to take up her role. This has caused no small amount of distress over the island's inevitable destiny to sink beneath the raging waves. Lack concludes with a proposal. How's about you go and meet with the other maidens and fetch the maiden's relics? As you had hoped, Laddie appears to be the key to the island's salvation. You ask, should we kill the maidens and steal the relics? Laddie shakes her head rapidly, as if to insist that you definitely should not do that. As Lack explains, each maiden has an attendant, an escort, and protector. This would make it difficult to take the relics by brute force. This island is not the only one home to a spirit. There are islands throughout this archipelago, and upon each dwells one of the 4 maidens who govern their own spirit. The self-proclaimed spirit explains that if you bring the maiden's relics that each of these maidens possess back to this spire, Laddie will be able to become a maiden herself. Laddie shows the staff in her hand, wearing an expression that seems to say, "This is a maiden's relic." If Laddie becomes a maiden and performs the maiden's ritual at the altar, the island can be saved. The world-changing immensity of what you have just learned echoes in your mind. It takes you a little while to fully digest it, but it does just so happen you've been readying a seaworthy vessel for your own purposes. You accept Lack's proposal to help Laddie become a maiden. So, you want me to poof you back to the entrance? You decide to make for the spire's exit. Accompanied by your new allies, you make to enter the village, but Laddie seems to find something about this idea disagreeable and clings to a tree nearby, refusing to budge. "Oh, I got this one," says Lack, evidently with some kind of plan in mind. The fluffy creature begins to chant a sort of mysterious spell. Suddenly, Laddie's face is transformed into that of an odd old man's. Laddie touches her transformed visage and then gives a thumbs up, perhaps as if to say, "Good job, you are a god." But Laddie looks sideways at you as she walks into the village, her identity now safely hidden. This is your home. A desk pushed up near the wall is adorned with an unfurled map and a scattering of books. The navigation map is of your own design and depicts the various islands in this region of the sea. It contains information on the maidens of those nearby islands, culled meticulously from books and the tales of passing travelers. Before all of this, you had found yourself unable to merely sit and watch the village's decline, and so planned a voyage to seek aid from the maidens of the other islands. After popping into the back room, you emerge with a carefully polished ship's wheel, and present it to your companions. It is the final piece of the ship you restored at the grotto. With it, you will finally be able to set sail on the voyage you have dreamed of for so long. You have made ready for the voyage, but before you set sail, you decide to stop in at the mayor's to say your farewells.